You have found our fortress.
Oh, have I? I was just looking for the nearest McDonald's. Hi everyone, this is the trailer breakdown for the Skyrim Dawnguard DLC, or expansion pack as Bethesda likes to call it, because they're vain. What they mean by expansion pack is it tends to be much larger than your usual DLC that we get these days, and we'll try and derive that from the trailer. Okay, let's continue. As we can see here, this might be the player character, if you watched the trailer before, carrying the Elder Scrolls. You may recognize them from Skyrim. I can't imagine where the player might get the Elder Scrolls, in considering what you did with them in Skyrim, but it seems this player character is carrying them while the camera pans downwards, and this Vampire Lord character wants them. So the Elder Scrolls, as we'll see later, is a very important part of this DLC for the Vampire Lord's plans of conquest. At least that's what I'll call them till now. Please feel free to correct me below.
Returned, my daughter.
Yes, usually these DLCs usually have, the DLC trailers usually detail how you start the DLC, as it were. And it turns out to sort of contact the Vampire Lord, you have to rescue the daughter of the Vampire Lord and then bring her back to him, and that sort of starts the DLC. So that's what the trailer usually does. So a daughter will be involved. Obviously it will be some sort of lost vampire to sort of create sympathy with the vampire faction of some sort.
But what is it you seek? Is it to be one of us?
Yes, as you can see here, vampires have been expanded upon in the game. As you can see here, the player is transforming from himself into a sort of vampire lord figure with wings and scariness and everything like that, in a sort of horrifying way, kind of like the werewolf from the also, but kind of like that. It'd be kind of, there'd be a sort of quest line, kind of like the companion werewolf, although probably not as boring, where you will eventually do a number of things before you change into a vampire lord. But I assume, as he said, you can choose between the vampires or the Dawnguard faction. And I assume once you change into a vampire lord, that cuts off one of the factions. We'll be talking about the Dawnguard faction in just a bit, but this is pretty cool. You can probably do lots of cool stuff with that, and obviously this is like indicative of how deep this DLC was compared to a few others that Bethesda have done, like a few of the Oblivion ones and a few of the Fallout 3 ones, which are pretty bad. Oh, okay, let's continue.
To make the darkness your own, to feast on the souls of the living.
Now, some of you might know that Oblivion, which is the place the player eventually travels to in Elder Scrolls 4, isn't actually one dimension, it's multiple ones, of which Dawnguard, Aldun's dimension is one of them. They are the sort of personal dimensions of the Daedra Lords, and I'm not sure if there's a vampire Daedra, but I think this sort of path to another dimension, amongst of which Earth is one, where the player can go to and be unique things and something like that. So that looks pretty cool. So it looks like you'll travel to a new realm, as it were. But obviously the fate of the world is in Tamriel itself, as we can see a little bit later. We also saw some pretty cool armor there, the blood, stuff like that. We also saw the player new animations of him preying on people. I didn't actually play a vampire in the game, so I don't know if you can actually do that. I don't think you could. I think sucking life just was a sort of beam, as it were, and you couldn't actually sneak up to people and go and have a feast on their neck. So you couldn't do that. What else? That was it. I guess we'll see some more.
And the dead.
Yeah, this is probably the Daedra realm I'm talking about. It looks sort of spooky and dangerous. It doesn't look like something you'd find in Skyrim. So this is probably a place where you go to and meet with people and meet the Daedra Lord. I cannot yet recall, or does not exist, of vampire things. It might be that the undead Daedra Lord that I've just made up in my head. Let's continue.
Or are you with them? The Dawnguard.
What's really interesting about this DLC is that if you just take a look and notice beyond the factions and their obviously they're vampire hunters that want to kill these vampires, and there's a lot at stake, as it were, between them. If you look at sort of the gameplay, if you look at all the areas, they're much larger than some of the Skyrim towns, at least. If you went to the Imperial town like Solitude and stuff like that, and you went to the castle, I can't remember what it's called, the Blue Palace and stuff, this building looks like it dwarfs the Blue Palace by several fold, and if you saw that castle right there, it was actually huge. So obviously there's going to be an emphasis in that in this mod. Instead of exploring sorts of small towns, they're going to sort of focus on 2 large areas and create a different gameplay aspect out of that. And you know, that way they're going to add a lot of depth, because there'll be a lot of rooms to explore, a lot of NPCs to explore, a lot of deeper characters, instead of just replications of characters across smaller towns. So that'd be quite interesting. That's what I find quite interesting beyond the vampire hunters. But obviously we saw the vampire hunters itself, which obviously are called the Dawnguard, and now I know why they're called the Dawnguard. I can't believe no one else got that, but I think a few people got that, where they are guarding the dawn, because obviously the vampires want to black out the sky so they can dominate the earth. That's pretty clear. But obviously they use crossbows. They're probably, when they use crossbows, that means they preserved a lot of technology. We've all heard of Morrowind, where they use crossbows in Morrowind, but obviously in Elder Scrolls technology gets lost in time, but it gets preserved by small societies, including the Dawnguard, which use crossbows against the vampires. And obviously a few of those crossbow weapons will be silver bows. That's werewolves, I'm a moron. Obviously those crossbows will be garlic bolts. Okay, obviously those crossbows are meant to stake vampires. That's right. So that'd be really, really cool to see, and it'd be cool to see these people. And this is probably one of the factions you can join. And I suppose I can tell right, it's probably going to be the most boring faction to join. I can tell you that. But then again, it might be exciting. But then fighting for a bunch of goody goods is never the most fun thing in the game. But cool weapons nonetheless. It's pretty cool.
They think they can stop us, but we will find them.
So you saw everything in action there. They got to see the crossbows, you saw the vampire lord stumbling at the walls, you saw some new enemies, a huge big troll with big horns that you can fight that's pretty much got the same animations as the giant. You fight lots of vampires. They look like Nosferatu in the mountains, so you'll be obviously in lots of mountains. Obviously, there might be some new monsters in the Skyrim mountains. And here is fighting a vampire lord, which turns into little bats, which means you can't shoot it, and maybe the bats bite you and hurt you and drain your health. Kind of like the Spriggan. A lot of replication here. But, you know, it's cool. It's all about the theme, it's all about the story, it's all about new things that they can do with the engine and not trying to reinvent the wheel. So that'd be quite cool. So I can't wait to play it. Obviously, I wonder if the player could do this. The player won't be able to do it, like turn the bats and start attacking its enemies. I don't think it might happen, but I guess some of you modders might be able to do something like that. But let's continue on. Yes, obviously this player character hasn't been feeding his horse correctly. That's right, we're adding new features where the horse has to be kept up and look good, otherwise it'll look like this horrible little skinny thing right here. No, that's not right. You get a horrible demon horse from the vampire realm, obviously, in the background there. Not only that, you get to fight on the back of the horseback as well, which is obviously you can include it in the latest patch, but obviously they wanted the trailer to show off and go, look what you can do. But obviously that's in there too. Obviously you got the vampire lord there that does the cool thing that lifts the sort of vampire up and sort of drains energy from it in a sort of much more elaborate and much more shocking in all way, like the vampires from the original game. So that's pretty cool. Oh, I hate when that happens. You know when you drop your watch and you just can't resist going in after it? I know what that dragon feels like.
The Elder Scrolls will be mine, and the tyranny of the sun.
Obviously this is an apocalyptic event, but in gameplay terms, if you complete one of the campaigns, I'm assuming, or maybe it's the beginning of the campaign, maybe if you go in the Dawnguard campaign and this happens, it's at the beginning of the campaign, but I'm assuming if you complete the vampire campaign, something apocalyptic will happen, and there's a big nightfall would consume the landscape, and that's shown here over, I can't remember what it's called, who cares, Dragon Hall, White Run? Yeah, over Whiterun, where the blackened sky will go and it's telling us, no, this is not just some land to the north of Skyrim. This has consequences for the rest of the thing, and you're covered in night and stuff like that. And obviously, I didn't mention before that night obviously affects vampires. So obviously you can be a vampire lord or a vampire or something like that at night time, and you'll be super, super powerful. But during the daytime, which is obviously inevitable in this game, you'll be a lot weaker. In fact, probably the sun might hurt you, and perhaps that sort of changes the gameplay, makes it a lot more interesting, makes it a lot more tense, where you just have to, you know, if you're a vampire run away from the sun as it sets. Obviously, the end of the game is having a blanket of darkness overcome the landscape, shown as here. It's kind of like that Lonesome Road thing where they showed like a nuclear bomb going off in the Mojave, and you're just like, oh, this affects the Mojave. But it didn't actually really. You might just get 2 new places to go in Skyrim, and you know, it kind of cheats you. But that looks pretty cool. It's sort of showing us that, at least.
Shall end.
There's not a lot of information on the lore of Elder Scrolls Dawnguard. It merely says that there is a faction called Dawnguard that wants to eradicate vampires from Skyrim, and obviously that looks to have good reason, you know, unless you like it night all the time, you know, you don't want to get raped or anything. Yeah, it looks good, looks interesting, looks like they've tried new gameplay concepts. They've fit in with the patches where they you fight on top of horses, and obviously you can change into a vampire lord, which obviously has much more dynamism than a werewolf, but it sort of transforms in the same way. Lots of new spells. You got the crossbows from the Dawnguard. You probably got a lot more deeper characters, a lot more larger areas. I think deeper characters is something I really want above, you know, shooting a projectile like every other weapon in the game, or being a vampire lord or anything. I can get that from mods. What I really want is good writing, deeper characters. When I was walking through Skyrim, the one thing that put me off was just the fact that every character was as one-dimensional as a line. I'd like the fact there's larger areas. It makes me think there'll be more dimensions to each character, and you have more people you know and different variations of character and different depths. And 3-dimensional characters, basically. That's what I really want. Kind of like Fallout New Vegas, not Fallout 3. And that this looks like to have something like that. So that'd be really cool to check out. I don't know when it's coming. Obviously, it's an Xbox exclusive, so it might come to Xbox quite promptly before E3, maybe a little bit after E3. What I do know is it won't come for PlayStation 3 and PC in a very, not for a very long time in games terms. So I mean like a month or 2. So I have the Xbox version, so that's good. I can play it there. What else? It looks pretty good. It looks good. They said it was an expansion pack and not a DLC. So if you can imagine like a DLC for like Fallout or something, or Oblivion's only 12 hours. This is like a good old expansion pack. You remember when I hear expansion pack, I think of Warcraft 2, The Burning Crusade, where it was like a whole campaign, or Brood Wars, StarCraft Brood Wars, it was like a whole campaign of shit, and you did lots and lots of stuff. So hopefully this might be a good 40-hour, good 50-hour. Don't kid yourself. I could maybe 20 hours at least, 20 hours, 30 hours, something like that. A lot more choice, and unlike other DLCs where it's essentially on a road and you just essentially follow one path. A lot more things to do and stuff like that, and basically just adds a lot to the game, because you have to say it's about Bethesda. For all Skyrim's faults, writing included, Bethesda, you know, they're gradually improving the game, you know, fighting horses included. So I can't wait to play this. Well, I can't wait really, but I guess it'll be pretty good, and it'll probably have a good story. Might be wrong, but what do you think? Please write down below. See you guys later.
Better with Connect for Xbox 360.
Here's a shout, fuck off.